Well, good afternoon, everyone. For RC Groups, this is Doug W. I am working, as some of you know, on my stretch of the Windrider 737-700 to an 800 series, and so I thought I'd do a quick, just sort of tutorial on how I did that. And I wanted to show everyone progress on what has been delaying me significantly and a source of some consternation, the nose gear door modification. This is the gear mod that a few people have done on the groups, which is, I believe, was described as rewarding but difficult. This is probably one of the hardest mods I've done. I would rather stretch several 737s and make flaps and spoilers on everybody's airplane than do one gear mod. This is extremely difficult, in my opinion at least. So, just going to show you the operation of it. It has a sort of a two-switch sequencer that I'm using that I got off of Hobby King, and you'll see how this works. I took off the wheels on the nose gear strut because I'm going to use smaller wheels for the actual nose gear. So this is just sort of the test. Gear comes up, and then there's about a 3-second delay, and then you'll see the sequencer move, and it pulls the gear doors close. Some of the modifications to the gear doors themselves include bending them. You'll notice they have quite a curve to them. They have to be cut, so you can't actually use the stock gear doors. They had to be cut. No, pardon me. They had to be cut here. In doing so, we also had to add a new pin, which was actually quite easy, and I was able to drill a hole through the gear door portion itself to strengthen it. That's epoxied in place. A lot of the nose gear well has to be cut out, which is not unusual given the other modifications, just to fit the stock wheels, quite frankly. You'll notice, and I do this on all of my 37s, I raise the gear up quite a bit into the wheel well, so the aircraft actually sits slightly nose low as the correct aircraft do. You can see, pardon the shop, that's the nose gear of the Alaska 700. You can see the wedge tail sitting over there. So the actual, on both the wedge tail and the 700, I was able to raise the nose gear. So the nose gear bay itself is raised. This is the FMS T28 landing gear box, if you will, and here's what was left of it after cutting it apart to be able to get for sizing. In truth, this gear door modification has probably taken 8 to 10 hours programming, playing with it, finding the correct angles. So there you go, one more time for the record books. A little bit of delay, and then it closes up. Just to get the doors curved, it was pretty straightforward. I actually just used a, it seems a little crazy, but I used a flame, sort of a Bic lighter, if you will, and bent the plastic ever so gently, sanded some high spots, so it actually follows the curve quite nicely. So that is the gear door modification. Now to the 800 series. So some folks were asking how I went about doing this. As you can see with this section, I just cut it at a 90. And I computed that it needs to be 6.29 inches forward that's being added and 5.65 inches aft. The forward portion is pretty straightforward. I wanted to have structure inside, so I actually wasn't using the, I guess it would be the plugs, if you will. I didn't want the plugs to actually be structural, as that seemed highly complex, quite frankly. This was easy, very, very easy to do in this regard. So I actually built, put the aircraft on the work table. I used, 90 degrees to make sure that the fuselage was aligned, and then I basically hot glued and epoxied in this. It's a yardstick basically, just cut in here, and once that one piece was there, the aircraft, it's structural enough to hold the aircraft as one. So I can actually grab this entire aircraft and shake it by this piece, and it's absolutely totally fine. The rest of it is effectively just to maintain the look of the exterior, which I'll flip that over so you get a sense as to how that's done. I'm just using 6mm standard foam. I think RC Plain Foam is the company. This is me just testing with some Oracal, by the way, to see if how I want to blend it. But you can see it actually blends pretty well. I got it fared in pretty nicely, and optically to sort of carry the lines in. You know, I had lines from the front of the fuselage and the portion where I cut, so pretty straightforward. You just get a ruler and line up the lines, and then come across it at two very, very shallow angles with an X-Acto blade. And that gets your lines, and I've already done a couple test coverings of this just to see. It blends in pretty well once the actual Oracal 651 or 751 I'm using is on, and the windows are on, and the Alaska, I'm doing Alaska 800, is on. You won't be able to see it at all visually. So you kind of see how it fares in. On the rear, I have purposely left this out so you can see progress as to what it looks like. I'm actually going to be doing the rear just slightly differently, only because the aft section of it does not line up fully. You'll notice if you look very, very carefully, the aft portion of the fuselage starts to come up slightly. So because of that, I didn't want the aircraft to have this little weird bump. So to that end, what's going to happen is along the line here, I'm going to attach the rest of the section here. You can see how it kind of goes together. And from this line here to this line here, I'm actually going to take an entirely new piece of 6mm foam and fare it all the way in to this section so it stays one fluid piece. Anyways, so that kind of gives you a sense of the modification. It's quite a bit larger, you know, almost 12 inches larger than the 700. I believe it'll actually end up being quite a bit more stable as a result, and won't probably get the tail waggle that some of you may have seen on the Windrider 737. So, as always, feel free to PM me with questions, and thanks to everybody who already posted and paved the way on doing the nose gear modification. There is no scenario under which I could have done it without. So, thanks a lot, everybody.